fórum de extensão no mês de maio. Esse é o último encontro do fórum do mês de maio. Mês que vem nós continuamos, mas a primeira semana de junho nós teremos o concurso de vídeos, o esperado concurso de vídeos que a gente tem tido desde 2013. Esse ano a gente completa 11 anos de concurso de vídeo na Poli. Né? Esse ano a gente teve, eu acho que é um dos recordes de submissões de vídeos. Tivemos 22 vídeos submetidos. Quero parabenizar todos aqueles que submeteram, tiveram coragem de mandar seu vídeo para o concurso. Convidamos Deus e o mundo para serem avaliadores. Isso precisa ser o grupo de avaliadores está em 30 pessoas já. Convidei reitora, vice-reitor, diretor, coordenador do curso de civil, vice-coordenador do curso civil, coordenadora do mestrado, vice-coordenadora do mestrado, representante da PROEC, representante de especialistas em mídias externos, né, foram convidados. Temos professores da Universidade de Sergipe, professores da Universidade da Bahia participando da avaliação. Então, temos até funcionários, não foi? A gente não sei se a gente pensou em convidar alguns funcionários, não sei se a gente conseguiu finalmente. Mas eu sei que a gente convidou uma gama de avaliadores. Por que eu faço isso? Porque essas pessoas, às vezes, não têm tempo de assistir os vídeos. Mas se ele é avaliador, ele vai ter que assistir para dar nota. Então, assim, a gente aumenta o público que vai assistir os nossos vídeos e vai contribuir com sua avaliação e melhorias. Então, eu queria parabenizar a Jalisson, que por um período, coitada, trabalhou quase que só. Né? E aí, Alisson veio, a nossa ajuda na segunda, foi segunda que a gente se reuniu, ou foi terça? Eu já esqueci agora, já foi terça. E a gente botou todos os pingos nos is, e se Deus quiser, vai ser um sucesso novamente esse ano. Vamos apresentar os 10 melhores vídeos, e os 3 melhores vão receber um certificado de premiação, primeiro, segundo e terceiro lugar. Então, eu queria reforçar. Chamei Carol de última hora para fazer parte da equipe também, do concurso de vídeos. E o fórum, eu queria só reforçar quem é que está organizando o fórum do 10. Joab, eu sei que é um, que faz os posts. Maria Fernanda quem mais? Porque, veja, quando eu digo que tem uma equipe organizadora, eu me reúno toda semana com minha equipe da mostra. Toda semana a gente conversa sobre o tema. Então, na realidade, quando a gente diz que a gente é equipe organizadora, é porque a gente está se encontrando, que a gente está conversando, trocando ideias. Se não fizer isso, não é equipe, né? É indivíduo fazendo uma coisa individual. Perde todo o propósito de fazer um trabalho conjunto. Então, é importantíssimo. E quando eu presto contas, eu tenho muito cuidado. Não gosto de falar nada que não foi feito. Então, se eu disser que teve uma equipe organizadora, só digo que foi porque se eles trabalharam em equipe. Se trabalharam individualmente, não é equipe organizadora, não é verdade? Foi indivíduo organizador, não foi equipe organizadora. Então, é muito importante que a gente realmente veja isso. Reforçando aqui que nós teremos, então, o concurso de vídeo dia 6, dia 13, eu já convidei Matheus, que é o nosso mestrando que está defendendo no dia 17, vai fazer uma apresentação prévia para a gente poder também contribuir. Eu não me recordo quem foi o outro aluno que ia apresentar no dia 13, mas era bom fazer o curso. Era Isaac só? Só falta ele? Mas você ficou de falar sobre resíduos sólidos também, não? Aí, se não der, você faz dia 20, junto com a parte da prestação. Ficou para dia 13 ou dia 20? Não. Professor Cláudio. Quem é que se lembra? O professor Cláudio ficou para dia 13 ou 20? Alguém sabe? Tudo bom, Isaac? Pergunte a ele se ele ficou para dia 13 ou dia 20. Dia 20? Então, tá certo. Então, a gente vai ter que adiar um pouco. Dia 27 vai ser uma aula bem pesada, então. Vocês vão ter que prestar conta de todos os relatórios de ensino, pesquisa e extensão. E pesquisa serão os artigos, resumos expandidos para a mostra. Então, dê uma olhada nas mostras anteriores, dê uma olhada na formatação atual. Tem citação, tem referência. Então, são 2 páginas só, facinho de fazer, mas é importante que o trabalho tenha começo, meio e fim. Não pode ser, eu quero fazer e não fez. Né? Bom, a apresentação de hoje é muito especial. Nós temos um aluno que veio através da bolsa do GCUB, né, que é uma bolsa das universidades, né, que se juntaram brasileiras e vem recebendo, acho que a gente tem, cada ano eles oferecem 800 bolsas no Brasil todo, e aqui só no PEC nós temos 2 alunos que foram aceitos à Nigéria. É para ficar aqui, sim, desculpa. E aí é um prazer realmente estar aqui com o nosso querido aluno Luca, Mandei Luca, da Nigéria, e eu dei o maior desafio, acho que dessa turma. Mas como o inglês dele é a língua que ele entende mais do que português, né, eu achei que, de certa forma, eu ajudei ele, porque todo o material de sustentabilidade social, a maioria é em inglês. Então, e o coitado, ele recebeu acho que uns 10 artigos, ainda procurou mais artigos, e vai apresentar para a gente um resumo desse tema, que eu acho que é um tema revolucionário dentro da engenharia civil. A gente fala muito de sustentabilidade ambiental, muito, mas a social ainda é um tabu e a gente nem sabe o que tem que fazer para prevenir, mas para garantir que a sustentabilidade social seja contemplada, né, quando eu digo que uma obra é sustentável. Então, energia a gente conhece bem, a aula passada foi muito boa, que acho que foi Matheus que deu, né? Um amigo de José Vitor, que falou sobre a parte de eficiência energética, mas é uma área bem desenvolvida, com critérios claros, indicadores claros, certificadoras que fazem isso. Mas a sustentabilidade social, eu ainda sinto que, apesar de as pessoas entenderem que é necessária, ainda não tem indicadores muito claros. Ele tem algumas barreiras. Por exemplo, as pessoas acham que é caro fazer sustentabilidade social. Será que é caro mesmo? Não sei. Né? Então, o Luca fez toda essa revisão literária e vai fazer a palestra de hoje em inglês. So, it's a pleasure to invite Luca Monday Luca, to present the theme. So, now, the time is yours. You have your... Oh, here.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. Boa tarde. Yes, it's a privilege standing before you guys to present this topic, social sustainability in construction projects. I will start from extending the hand of shake to everybody as a form of social gratitude to everybody welcoming into this space, and also presenting this topic, social sustainability. First of all, I would say social is all depend on we human beings, how we respond to our entire environment in regards to construction project and what are the necessary steps in regards to construction project. I'll start that there is no social sustainability without the UN report, which is the Brundtland report of 1987. And from that report, that's when social sustainable development came into being. And sustainable development from 1987, as a result of the UN reports, involved some aspects according to UN said that sustainable development are those needs present. The present needs we need to meet without compromising the futures of the next generation, which is the UN report from 1987. But from Wisbon-Siena, 2014, it said sustainable development, it integrates 4 principles. And those principles involve integration. 1. The next one involves sustainable use. The next principle involves integral integration. And the third involves integration equity. First of all, I would say integral integration. We need to integrate all those processes together in order to achieve a sustainable society. Then the next one, it talks about sustainable use. What are the sustainable use of materials in regards to construction projects? All those things must be in place in order to achieve a sustainable society. Then the next one, it talks about equity, integral generational equity, how those materials being equally distributed between the various arms, the various systems. Then the third one, it talks about intergenerational equity within ourselves, those materials. Jeffrey also describes sustainable development as an interaction of 3 complex systems: the world economic, the global society, and Earth's physical environment, which is the 3 dimension of sustainable development, which is the social, the economic, and the environment. John Atkinson, 1997, proposed what we call the triple triangle of sustainable development, using the form of, I'll call it SET. We all did mathematics. union of set, the category of economic, the category of the environment, and the social aspect to form a triangle. I somehow explain this as a complement of intersection of sustainable development, whereby A represents the economic, B represents the environmental dimension, and C the social dimension to form an equilateral triangle. An equilateral triangle whereby all the arms, all the various positions, the social, the economic, and the environment are together, forming an angle. Both arms having an angle of 60 degrees each to form a stable society. The dimension of sustainable development, the economic aspect, the environmental aspect, and the social aspect. All those dimensions have some critical features. From the economic aspect, we look at the revenue, the profits, the return on investment, the ethical business practices, the fair labor practices, the responsible supply chain management. When the environmental aspect, we look at resources conservation, pollution preservation, carbon footprint reduction, biodiversity preservation, reducing energy consumption, minimizing waste generation, and the social aspect, which we will dwell on. The employee well-being, the labor rights, the diversity and inclusion, the community engagement, the stakeholders relationship, the positive work environment, and supporting local communities. When you look at all those aspects, the least of them is the social dimension. Those are the least aspects we hardly taken care of. We hardly look in any construction project. The social aspect, which is the employee well-being, the labor rights, the diversity and inclusion, the community engagement, the stakeholder relationship, the positive work environment, the supportive community. Why this rest? We dwell more on the economic aspect, and more on the environmental aspect. We dwell more on the economic aspect because in every project, we dwell more on the revenue, more on the profit, more on the return of investment, but less on the employment well-being, the labor rights, the diversity and inclusion, the community engagement, the stakeholder relationship. We dwell less on that aspect. But these two aspects, the economic dimension and the environmental dimension, those are the two aspects that we always look at. But based on this, I would like to throw more light on the social dimension aspect, which is the economic, the employee well-being, the labor rights, the diversity and inclusion, the community engagement, stakeholders relationship, positive work environment, and supporting local community. We say social sustainability as a pillar of sustainable development. From Foxman and Johnson 2016, they said, social sustainability can be considered the pillar responsible for most need of human well-being. Construction project is made up of several aspects. We have the foundation, we have the pillar, we have the beam, we have the slab. Imagine you removing the pillar. What will happen? Chaos. What will happen? Total destruction. So social sustainability, as Foxman and Johnson said, is the pillar responsible for most need human well-being. It's very critical in any construction project. Also, Mosek and Sabak 2021 says, implementation provide a potential economic advantage. Once this aspect is taken care of in any construction project, you'll find out that the economic advantage tends to produce more revenue generation once this aspect is taken care of. But along the line, we tend to look more lesser on the social aspect in the construction projects. Also, from 2009, it says, social sustainability concerns the ability of human beings of every generation, not to only survive, but to thrive. Survival, survival, survival. Survival. Not to survive, but to thrive. A society whereby everything is equal. He has everything at his disposal. Everything is equal. Not just living just to survive, but to thrive, to become the best, to thrive, to have all the necessity as a man and as a person. Then, like also said, the process is needed to achieve a better living conditions. The process is needed to achieve a better living condition. The aspect of social sustainability, when we have the equity and social justice, we have the community development, we have human rights, we have health and well-being, education capacity building, governance and participation. I would like to ask, how many of us here that the government would like to build a project and call you for your input? How many of us here? The answer is no. We don't participate. But indirectly, we are stakeholders to that project because our voices also count. Because we are the end users of the project. Governance and participation is never there. It's never there. When we talk about equity and social justice, we must have an equilibrium, a balance. We must have a balance. How are the resources being distributed? Is it more on the social aspect, more in the economic aspect, or more in the environmental aspect? For me as a person, I would say it depends on the economic and environmental aspect, but lesser on the social aspect. Community development. Every project has its aim and has its objective. The aim of every project is for the end users, how they respond to the project, and how they make use of the project. How many of us here, our community, in terms of community, they have called us to put an input to improve our lives based on the development that is going on in our places? Human rights, labor laws, these are very, very critical aspects in terms of construction projects, because so many of the projects you find out that the labor rights are there. Laborers are being treated as slaves. I would like to ask, what are your perspectives concerning social sustainability as a student? Is it the way you yourself know your perspective? You yourself knows how you see social sustainability as a student? Social sustainability in the construction industry. From Bade Vasquez, social sustainability can be seen or understood as a series of processes to improve the health, the safety, well-being condition of any person, directly or indirectly, involved during the project life cycle. Mark the word, processes to improve the health, safety, and well-being of any person, directly or indirectly involved in the project life cycle. We are directly involved in any project, be it directly or indirectly. We are indirect stakeholders. We are indirect stakeholders to the project, and we can also be direct stakeholders to the project. So how is the project? What is the benefit of the project to us? How does the project improve to our lives as a person? As Bade Vasquez says, it's a process. What are those processes? What are those processes? Which we will find out as we progress. Hill and Boyle, 1997 says, social sustainability can be seen as a ways of improving the quality of lives, making provision for social self-determination and cultural diversity, implementing skills, training, and capacity improvement of disadvantaged people, seeking intergenerational equity, and seeking equitable allocation of construction social costs and benefits. How many of us here, some projects are being constructed without considering these guys, the disadvantaged people? Intergenerational equity, none. For me, intergenerational equity, how does a project achieve its present needs now and also without affecting the future generation? In regards to the environment, how does it play a critical role now? These are disadvantaged people, can be the less privileged, the disabled, and the rest. So this aspect must be taken care of in the construction industries. Must really be taken care of in the construction industry, because every project must have a direct impact to the end users. The end users are the essence of the project. If a project does not occupy this or involve all these aspects, it's never a project. It must be able to occupy, to take care of the disadvantaged people, involve intergenerational equity, seeking equitable allocation of construction social costs and benefits, and preserving the cultural diversity of the people, and also making provision for self-determination, as these both two have said, but Vasquez and Hill have said. In all construction projects, we must take care of all these aspects in able to achieve a social, sustainable construction project. Those are few literatures from Armot and Dale based on their own perspective in regards to social sustainability in construction projects. Dole says social sustainability is reflected through the meeting and managing of the needs of the sectors, of the different sectors, different stakeholders in the project. Policies also say development that is compatible with the harmonious evolution of civil society. LinkedIn and Grizzly said, social sustainability is given if work within a society and the related institutional arrangements satisfy an extended set of human needs. Every project must satisfy the human needs, which is the necessity of every project. Gates and Leeds says social sustainability is made up of three components. 1, the basic needs. 2, individual human capacity. And 3, social or community capacity. Those 3 aspects must be included in every project, be it highway, be it schools. Those 3 aspects must be included in every project. The Predinic says it relates to the application of corporate social responsibility practices, which we will look as we progress. Hill and Smith said social sustainability as the engagement among employees, local communities, client and supply chain to ensure meeting the needs of current and future populations and communities. These are few literatures. As we progress, we'll throw more light in regards to the aspect of social sustainability in the construction industry. From Vadevos, it says social sustainability, a series of processes that improve the safety, the health, the well-being during the project life cycle, and the consideration of both the current and future needs of stakeholders. These are processes. What are those processes? We'll find out what those processes are. The health aspect, what is the impact of that project in regard to the health of the people around? And the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders? We'll find out who those stakeholders are. Like I said, we are direct stakeholders. We can be direct stakeholders or indirect stakeholders. We'll find out as we progress. And well-being during the project, for us to achieve a social sustainable project, this aspect must be considered. This aspect must be considered. The well-being during the project life cycle must also be considered because it's a critical part. We need to consider this aspect. The social impact during the construction project life cycle. But Vasquez also brings out some critical points, like 5 sequential phases of project life cycle, which is the planning, the design, the construction, operation, maintenance, and renovation, disconstruction. These two aspects are the critical aspects in every project, which is the planning and the design aspect. In every project, there is an idea. An idea, how this project will impact the people. What is the benefit of this project? Who are the stakeholders? Who are those involved in achieving this project? It revolves around the planning phase, the design phase. What are the environmental conditions? What are the environmental constraints in regards to those projects? Those two aspects are the critical parts. But not to mind the third aspect, the construction, the operation and maintenance, the innovation and the construction are also critical, because this aspect is where the social sustainability aspect plays a critical part. Because the construction involves people, the operation involves people, the renovation and the construction involve people. It involves several aspects here, which we will look as we progress. I said the planning phase from Vinegas. We said the planning phase is an idea or concept generation phase with the analysis of the feasibility of the project objective, the scope, the analysis of the physical and non-physical constraints, which can be the people living there, the environmental conditions, and the likes in regards to the planning phase. The key step in design phase, those two aspects, the planning and design phase, are the critical aspects, but the design phase has some critical features, which is the safety plan. Is the project safe? What are the safety measures? Sustainability approach. What is the benefit of the project in regards to sustainability? The innovation in regards to material usage. What kind of materials? Are they eco-friendly to the environment and to the people living there? Those are some critical questions in regards to the design phase. The stakeholders engagement and review. Who are the stakeholders? Like I say, we can be stakeholders, we can be directly involved in the project or indirectly involved in the project. All those aspects must be taken care of. The coordinations. How are the resources going to be put together to achieve a desired project? The risk management assessment. What are the risks involved in the project? Be it direct or indirect risks. We need to take and to look those aspects. The needs assessment. Does the people really need the project? Or we are just building it? So all those aspects must be taken care of in the design phase. From Benioff and Mazik, they say the social life cycle assessment of products, materials should be determined in the phase by analyzing the future impact of this product, materials during construction and operation. So all those aspects must be ascertained and determined during the design phase in order to achieve a sustainable project. Like I said, the two critical phases of the sustainable construction project life cycle, which is the planning phase and the design phase. When these two phases are met, we're going to have a project. From the two critical phases, according to Valdez Vasquez, he says that those two critical phases are the necessary phase that any changes can be made. But once we move down to the construction, operation, and renovation phases, you hardly make any changes. You hardly make any changes. For you to correct any changes is through the design and the planning phase. Those are the changes you need to take the necessary consideration in regards to the plans. Who are those involved? What are the environmental impact and the rest? But once the project kickstarts, it's very difficult to make any changes. From the graphical representation here, you find out that at the lower stage, you can make any changes. But once you progress in regards to the construction phase, it costs time, energy, security, health, safety, quality, and cost, which is very difficult to gain back when the project has started. The effect of poor planning and design on construction project life cycle. 1, project abandonment, delay environmental impact, stakeholder dissatisfaction, safety hazard, reduce quality. So the effect of poor planning have several effects. As a result of project abandonment, delay, environmental impact, stakeholder dissatisfaction, safety hazard, reduce quality. If you look around Brazil, you'll find that there are so many abandoned projects. Is the project serving any purpose? No. This is as a result of poor planning. Poor planning, and as a result, it has an environmental impact on the people living within those places. When you talk about stakeholder dissatisfactions, like I said, we can be direct stakeholders and indirect stakeholders. Everybody is a stakeholder in the project. It has a severe effect on those people. The safety hazard. So many projects, abandoned projects along the place, is becoming a place for thefts, place for armed robbers, staying into it, committing all sorts of crimes and the likes. Reduce quality. When any project that is not planned, it tends to reduce the quality of this project. The three critical phases from the 5 phases, the construction phase, the renovation phase, and the construction and the maintenance phase. So those aspects must be taken care of also, because those aspects, once the project has started, you hardly can make any changes in regards to those aspects. The stakeholders in construction project in regards to sustainable construction, in regards to social sustainability in construction project. Edmund Fortin and Praise says, the term stakeholders designate all individuals or group who are directly or indirectly involved in the selected scales and beyond, and whose life, environment, or businesses are affected by construction projects. Every individuals or group of individuals, the word directly or indirectly, involved in the selected scales and beyond, whose life, environment, or businesses are affected by the construction projects. Every project has effect on individuals. It can be both economic, environmental, or social. The classification of these stakeholders, seen by Edmund and Fortwith and Priest, he says you can classify these stakeholders into 5 different categories. Those that make the decision, those that facilitate decision, those that are affected by the decisions, the building stakeholders, those that are affected by the sustainability issues. Those that make the decisions are the key stakeholders. Those that facilitate the decisions are also the key stakeholders. Those that are affected by the decisions are we, the community, the people around. The building stakeholders, those involved in the building processes, they are also stakeholders. Those that are affected by the sustainability issues are also stakeholders. So he got this right by saying that the most critical part is that we tend to overlook this aspect. Those affected by the sustainability issues, we tend to overlook those aspects, because these are aspects that we need to take care of. We need to look more critical. Those affected by the sustainability issues, because the environment is facing a global warming, which by every construction project must definitely consider these aspects. These aspects, those that are affected by the sustainability issue and those affected by the decision. In every decision, there's an action. The categories of these stakeholders, the internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. The internal stakeholders involve the owners, the tenants, the users, the clients, while the external stakeholders involve the designers, the contractor, the community groups, and the government agencies. The external stakeholders, they are not directly involved in the project. The influence, you hardly find the influence more in regards to the project. But the owners, the tenants, the users, I'll say no. The internal stakeholders, the owners, they are directly involved in the project. They find the influence are more in the project compared to the external stakeholders. In the design phase of all this, of any construction project, be it the internal stakeholders in regards to the internal and external stakeholders, they have direct influence in both of the projects. Like the external stakeholders, the direct influence in regards to the planning. He has a direct influence in regards to the planning development phase. The zoning agency regulative bodies, those are bodies responsible in regards to the project. They have a direct influence in the project in regards to planning aspect. While the internal stakeholders, the owners, developers, and investors have a direct influence in the project in regards to planning. While in the design phase also, the external has direct influence in the project. The construction phase also, they both have direct influence in the project. So everybody has a direct influence in the project. You know, everybody has a role to play in the project. The major construction stakeholders with respect to social sustainability: the government, the manufacturers, the builders, the clients, the communities. These are the critical stakeholders in a construction project. The government play a critical part in regards to policy, education, technology development, control and monitoring, incentive. The manufacturer also play a part. The materials in manufacturers, are they eco-friendly? Do they improve the life and safety of the people using it? How is it contributing to the local community? And how efficient that material is in regards to the manufacturing aspect. The builder aspect also, efficient technology. What are those technologies in trying to put in place to save energy and to improve the safety and health of those people using the place? Education and training. How is it training its people? How is it training its workers? Those are questions. Job security and equal opportunity. How is it distributing? How equitable it is in regards to job security to his workers, in regards to the building aspect, the clients, the owner, the ownership type. What are the ownership type in regards to the project? The costs involved, the social sustainability evaluations. So those aspects are the critical aspects in any project. The 5 processes, the 5 stakeholders are the critical stakeholders in order to achieve a major and a desired sustainable project. The concept of Valdez Vasquez, it tried to bring out 4 concepts, which is the corporate social responsibility, the community involvement, the safety through design, and the social dimension. The corporate social responsibility is a way of method on how communities or how businesses or how companies interact with the community to hear their opinions in regards to the effect of the project on how to facilitate more development in regards to it. The safety through design, the design, how safe is the design? What are the hazards? All those aspects must be taken care of. The community involvement, are the community really involved in the project or not? The social designs involve the decision making during the design phase. Are the people being taken along in regards to this? So those are aspects we need to look. The corporate social responsibility in construction projects, Lesser 2008, it said a company can be recognized as socially responsible when it applies a corporate governance structure, taking into account working environment issues, improve their sustainability, occupational health and safety measures, relationship with suppliers, and commitment to a local community engagement. So a company must be able to include this, the environmental issue, improve the sustainability aspect, the occupational health and safety measures, relationship with suppliers, and commitment to local community engagement. Those aspects must be looked into. Those are critical aspects. Link and Health says there's an urgent need for the application of corporate social responsibility in construction industry because different sectors in the industry are publicly viewed as irresponsible about adverse social effect of high carbon emission, resources exploitation, and disturbance on environment. Every project has this in it. High carbon emission, resources exploitation, and disturbance on environment. In all construction projects, you find those 3 aspects. The strategic component of corporate social responsibility, the stakeholders' engagement, the ethical business practices, the environmental stewardship, the community development, diversity and inclusion, responsible supply chain, and corporate governance and accountability. The stakeholders' engagement. Like I say, we can be direct or indirect. Are we being taken into it? Our view, our opinion being incorporated into the project? The ethical business practice is the business obeying the law of the land, doing what is necessary, to facilitate the development, the environmental stewardship. How sustainable is the construction project in regard to environmental issue? The community development, what is the impact? What is the impact of the project to the community? The diversity and inclusion, the gender inequality between female and male, is that being taken care of in the project? So those are aspects. Responsible supply chain management, how is the distribution channels in regards to materials and the rest? And corporate governance and accountability. Can we hold our government accountable? Safety through design. It says safe design allows for safe use across the entire life cycle of the project, from construction through use, maintenance, and modification to deconstruction and demolition. What Valdez Vasquez is trying to say is safe designs allow you, from the construction phase, you must be able to achieve safety right from the deconstruction phase without any safety hazard. Tolling and carbon sinks is known as the prevention through design or design of construction for safety. Schwert said it's recognized by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health as a key strategy for improving workplace safety. Ways of promoting safety through design in social sustainability in construction projects. 1, preventing accident and injury, enhancing worker well-being and workers' health and well-being, protecting the community, minimizing environmental impact, long-term safety and resilience, regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. I have a question. Where is Brazil? Where is Brazil? Where is Brazil in regards to the safety aspect? Brazil still does slavery. As you can see, we show that about 1,700 people were rescued from work and alcoholic to slavery. 11% of domestic workers were forced to quarantine at their homes. This shows that slavery takes part everywhere in the world, even in Brazil, in regards to worker stress and the likes. Preventable disease also rise due to worker stress, due to unsafety aspect in regards to the safety action. As you can see, arthritis, hypertension has the highest, about 26.3%, which is a huge number in regards to slavery. It's a very, very huge number in regards to it. In regards to I tried to make an inferences. The previous construction project in 2014 during the World Cup in regards to safety. From February 7, 2014, it said a worker died at Manaus Stadium from head and chest injury, suffered while dismantling a crane. Safety has not been taken into that. March 29, 2014, a worker fall to death. A worker fall while installing a floor on temporary stand, being aided to the Arena Corinthians in Sao Paulo for the World Cup. A worker also died as a result of installing a floor. May 8, 2014, a worker is killed by an electric shock while installing a telecommunication network at the Arena Patana in Cuiabá. March 28, a worker died also after he fell from a stadium site in Manaus, the capital of state of Amazon. October 25, likewise, a fire outbreak in the foundation of the stadium site in Cuiabá, the capital of the central western of Mato Grosso. Those are safety aspects that must be incorporated in every construction project. Safety play a key part. Safety play a key part. As Valdez Vasquez has said, November 27, 2013, 2 workers also died as a result of crane collapse at Sao Paulo Stadium. December 14, likewise, worker fall and died. Likewise, in regards to lack of safety, June 12, 2012, a worker fall and died during the construction of the World Cup Stadium in Brazil, in Brasilia. Equity as an aspect of social sustainability in construction projects. And this aspect comprises fair employment practices, environmental justice and healthy equity, cultural diversity and inclusivity, equitable access to infrastructures and services, inclusive urban development, fair employment practices, fair employment practices. How is the employment be done in regards to gender equality? Is it racial, men against women, women against men? How is it being done? So putting these in the concept of social sustainability, how are those resources being allocated? The economic aspect, the environmental aspect, and the social aspect. We must have an equitable distribution of those resources. But in regards to employment, how is it being done in regards to the employment? Against opposite sex, environmental justice, and healthy equity. How are those aspects in regards to the economy, the environment? In regards to the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and the economic aspect. We need to look into those aspects also. The cultural diversity and inclusivity. How is the culture being taken into construction project in regards to culture? Those aspects also we need to look into. Equitable access to infrastructure and services. The disabled. Are they being featured in regards to our projects? Ways for them to use the project, the handicaps and the RECs. So those are aspects we need to take care of. As you can see from the graph here, the allocation of resources to women in regards to equity, you find out that the year 2019, we have a percentage of over 17.9%. 2020, 132.53.57 at the rate of. Then 2021, it begins to decline to 2022, whereby it declined to 43.2%. To show that this begins to decline as the year progresses by. So to show that equity is not being put in place in regards to this aspect. How to improve safety through design, collaborative design processes. What are the measures? What are the measures? What are the inputs from different stakeholders? Early hazard identification and risk assessment. We must take into consideration the early hazards in regards to the projects, the incorporation of safety features. What are the safety features in regards to the project? All those aspects must be put in place. The education and training. What are the education and training likes to the communities, to those people working? The consideration of site-specific conditions. What are the size constraints? All those aspects must be taken into consideration also. The social dimension, the social design, as a concept of sustainable development, von Schiebeck, he said, failure to consider social aspect during construction is associated with a series of risks that can compromise the results of the project in the medium term and have side effects that can jeopardize the quality of life for future generations. So the social aspects in every design must be considered. Component of social design as an aspect of social sustainability in construction projects. We have the inclusivity and accessibility, the community engagement and participation, the cultural sensitivity, identity, the public health and well-being, employment and economic opportunity, affordability and housing equity, the inclusivity and accessibility. How inclusive are we to any project? Is the project accessible to us? Community engagement and participation. Are we being taken into consideration in regards to any project? The cultural sensitivity and identity. Culture, they say it is the way of life of people. How is the culture? Is our culture being neglected in regards to the project? Or our culture is being featured into every project to preserve our identity as people? The public health and well-being. What is the impact of those projects to us? Be it the social aspect. What is the impact of the project to our health? And what is the employment opportunity and economic opportunity those projects have for us? Every project has an opportunity. It can be both detrimental aspect, taking so much away from us, and it can also add value to us. based on employment opportunity. Of revenue for us as a community can create so many aspects for us to achieve. The affordability and housing equity. How is it being distributed across each aspect? Is it affordable? Imagine a government building a house. What so much millions of naira, what millions of dollars? Is it affordable to you? Is it affordable to the less privileged? So all those aspects, the social aspect must also be considered. The community involvement. McPain and Box says, one key challenge for planning sustainable projects is to facilitate a dialogue, encouraging reflection of issues and concern. Every community must be involved. Community must be involved in every project. So it's trying to say that for a project, community must be involved. Their influence, their say must be known. Their say, their voices must be heard. And this aspect of the community involvement is been breaking down. How can we aid those communities' involvement in the project? The stakeholders' engagement. Like I say, we have direct and indirect stakeholders. We need to consult them. We need to hear the say, which is one aspect. So the mitigating of negative effect. What is the effect of the project in regards to the community? We need to let them know, hear the say, the cultural sensitivity. What the culture in the community? The culture, we need to take into consideration all those cultural aspects, the capacity building and empowerment. We need to arrange a town hall meeting to discuss the various aspects of the project and the likes, the need assessment and prioritizations. So those aspects, the needs assessment and prioritization. The community must be involved to know, okay, these are our needs. This is what we need. This is what we want. So these are ways of aiding community involvement in any project. The stakeholders' engagement, the mitigation of negative effects by telling them the effects, the pros and cons of the project, the cultural sensitivity and respect, the capacity building, bringing them together to form a synergy. This is the benefit of the project. And the need assessment. This is your need. This project is going to take this need, take care of this need, and take care of that need. They say the obstacle to community involvement. Hanna 2002 said, one of the biggest obstacles to community involvement is information, especially information, and trustworthiness. Once you don't have the necessary information, you find out that you are not being carried along in any project. Community involvement is somehow a barrier to you because you find out that the project is an obstacle. No, you don't want the project. No, the project is not good and the likes. So once the right information is being channeled out, is being given out, you find out that community will tend to participate more. Consolatory try to break down the community engagement, how to encourage community engagement in construction projects. He said he has 5 key criteria, and one, they must have time to commit to the process. You must give them time to commit to the process, which is one. The issue under consideration must be one which they perceive to be a problem. They must trust that the other stakeholders are fair and honest. There must be a commitment to the involvement for all stakeholders, and they must be aware of the opportunity to participate. They must have time to be fully involved in the project, which is a critical aspect. The issue under consideration, you must let them know the perceived issues. This is the issue. This is what we need to take care of. This is the aspect of the project. This is the necessity of the project. Then the third one is that they must trust the stakeholders. They must trust the stakeholders, and the stakeholders must be honest to them. Imagine government coming now to tell you, I'm going to build a project here now, and you don't trust the government. You find out that the sense of information, your involvement in the project is lacking, which is a critical aspect. Then I said, there must be a commitment for the involvement for all stakeholders. So all stakeholders must fully be involved, must fully be involved in the project. Not that government is here, you're here, and the other person is here. You find out that we have that discontinuity of the project, whereby everybody doesn't have that synergy to partake fully in the project. Then the fifth is that they must be aware of the opportunity to participate. You must try to give them the necessary information. This is why you need to participate in this aspect, to have your voice to be heard and for your problem to be solved. the barriers to social sustainability adoption in the construction industry. So many literatures have raised so many barriers in regards to social sustainability in construction industry. And one of them says the lack of financial support from the government. When there's no financial support from the government to the construction industry, the construction companies and the likes, we find out that they tend to neglect the social aspect in every construction project. The limited availability of bank loans for supporting sustainable related activities. So this is a critical aspect. Is the opportunity there for them to access loans or the necessary form to support activities that facilitate social sustainability? Those are critical questions. The complexity in the quantification of social sustainability measures. How do we quantify them? How do we know the social aspect? How do we know what and what we need to put into perspective? The perceived high cost of social sustainability implementation. What is the cost of implementing safeties in design? All those aspects we need to take in. We need to consider all those aspects also. Lack of education and awareness. Is the necessary education being churned out to the necessary communities or individuals in respect to the project? The tendency to maintain current practices. What are the practices? What are the systems and the likes? From Domingo, they said the main obstacle to implementing social sustainability in construction projects is a lack of knowledge about what social sustainability criteria should be included and the high level of subjectivity in prioritizing their importance. What are the criteria that should be included and the high level of subjectivity in prioritizing their importance? So which criteria do we need in regards to the project? What criteria do we need to facilitate this aspect? As Domingo says, McKenzie says it is difficult to quantify and measure social sustainability compared to the other aspect of sustainability, because social sustainability, you hardly measure it. So what are those criteria you can use to measure it? So it's difficult, as he said, especially when considering each country specific contents. I can use this criteria here in my country. In your country, you can use different criteria. The next person can use different criteria to quantify social sustainability. The enablers of social sustainability adoption in the construction industry. Raising stakeholders' awareness. Raising stakeholders' awareness. The stakeholders need to be aware of the process, of the entire processes, the essence of the project. They need to be aware. Evaluating contractor build. Once you evaluate contractor builds, those contractors that have social trends, social aspects, must be encouraged to proceed more, to implement more social aspects. The inclusion of social sustainability criteria as one of the evaluation criteria can increase competitiveness and among contractors and suppliers. Once we put those aspects to the various contract document, procurement document, intends to enable the social sustainability process in construction projects. Government regulation can put pressures on the stakeholders to implement social sustainability in the construction industry. So the government must play a critical part in implementing regulation that this aspect must be included in your project. Like I said, why is social sustainability in construction projects in developing countries still lagging behind? One, there's no more information in regards to the aspects, and the process has been taken less. Ahmad says social sustainability has been taken into consideration less when compared to other environmental and economic pillars, because it's a social aspect. We dwell more in the environment and the economic. Ballerino and Rosa said the reason for this could be that the developing country have been working to make intervention. Considering this aspect, on the other hand, in developed country, the concept of recognizing the rights of neighbor and employer is more deeply rooted. You find out that developing country struggles to implement these aspects. But in the developed world, this aspect is already implemented because the rights to every individual, the right to every citizen has been taken care of. Rosalind says, the more criteria used, the probability of decision-making success. What are the criteria you use to quantify social sustainability? As I say, the more criteria we use, the more the process becomes difficult to implement them. Which is why you find that social sustainability is being taken less in developing countries than in developed world. Social sustainability assessment criteria. Barry Vasquez proposed 6 criteria, which are outlined here. As I said, the stakeholders engagement, the user consideration, the team formation, the management consideration, the impact assessment, and the place context. Those 6 criteria. And all 6 criteria have some processes we must look to able to quantify that, yes, this project is truly social sustainable based on the processes. From this diagram, we can see the stakeholders at the top end, which is the major person. Behind the stakeholders is the community. Those 2 aspects are the major people in every construction project. The stakeholders and the people the project is going to benefit. The people the project is going to impact. The human resources, the safety and the health, safety and health, the industry and government are revolving around the project. Because once the project kickstarts, you find out that the safety aspect must be looked into, the human resources development aspect must be looked into, and the government policy and regulation also must be looked into. So all these aspects are enablers in the framework which Barry Vasquez proposed, which is the stakeholders, the community, the human resources, the safety, the governance and regulation. Those are aspects, and all these are aspects and enablers in the framework proposed by Barry Vasquez. Location, social sustainability has been, I would say, in extinction, or is still developing. This shows the location where the study is being conducted in developing countries and in developed world. From this, you can see that in Iran, we have about 5 studies in regards to this aspect. In China, also in El Salvador, in Hong Kong, in Jordan, United Arab Emirates, in Taiwan, in Singapore, in Egypt, in Ethiopia, in my country, Nigeria, in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and Malaysia. While in developing countries, we find that we just have Cyprus, Hungary, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. So these are places where the study is being conducted so far in regards to social sustainability. From this graph, we find that the major criteria, where those criteria, based on the framework proposed by Barry Vasquez, are being got into, because every country has its own specific criteria. Most of these criteria are being gotten from literatures, so many of them from literatures. And from the criteria, I find that the construction project has a greater part of it, having 9%, 100% of it, followed by the residential building. Those 2 aspects are the main focus area in regards to social sustainability. The social sustainability framework development. So many framework has been proposed in regards to social sustainability to address this issue. Govindak proposed a framework called a conceptual framework, and this framework is to address the tension along drivers, issues, barriers, and practices. His own framework. He proposed this framework to address these issues, the barriers and the practices. Hill and Bay in 1997, the practical framework for the attainment of social sustainability. And this framework has 4 pillars, which is the social, the economic, the biophysical, and the technical. The social pillar of social sustainability is based on the notion of equity, social equity, or social justice. Why don't he propose his own framework, social sustainability 3 system, comprising the economic system, the political system, and the cultural system. And his own framework, the economic system, is the monetary economic activities in the project. The political, it consists of the political attitude, orientation, decision, and activities implemented by different institutes. While the cultural system includes all cultural related practices and patterns of the societies, based on his own framework. These are methods of assessing social sustainability, and based on the criteria, we can use this various method to assess the criteria we need. And one of these methods is multi-criteria decision-making method. And this method has so many methods under it. The next one has statistical analysis, multi-objective algorithm, and others methods. The multi-criteria decision method, analytical hierarchy process, weighted aggregation, the DMATEC, the TOPSIC, the analytical network process, the best word method, best worst method, the protistic, the COPRACT, wide statistical method, the cluster analysis, the factors analysis, the one-way statistical analysis. These are methods of assessing social sustainability criteria in any aspect, be it construction projects, be it in school, be it anywhere, economic, everywhere. You can use this method to assess social sustainability. Assessment of social sustainability in construction projects. How can we assess this? What are the standards? What are the certification likes? The international standards in regards to social sustainability, 26,000 provide guidance on social sustainability responsibility, including principles and practices relevant to the community, to the construction industry. UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights is one of the assessment documents we use, offer principle for preventing and addressing adverse human rights impact related to business activities, including construction projects. The next method is industry-specific method. And this industry-specific method comprises the Global Reporting Initiative, a sustainability reporting standard that includes the social indicators relevant to the construction industry, such as labor practices, human rights, and community engagement. So this method, the Global Reporting Initiative, includes the labor practices, the human rights, and community engagement in regards to it. Then we have the leadership in energy and environmental design, green building certification program that incorporates social aspects such as economic engagement, equity, and human health. We have the government regulation and policy. The government policy also can aid in regards to assessing social sustainability in any project. It can be national, international laws, and the likes. Those are aspects the government can place a law in regards to safety aspects in working conditions. So those are ways of assessing social sustainability in construction and able to get those criteria. The government can set these criteria. Once you meet these criteria in regards to the project, your safety measures must be put in place, those various safety measures. So the government can aid in assessing social sustainability in construction projects. Then I say academic research and case studies. So many academic will also aid, is a way of assessing it in case of previous studies, previous antecedents, and the likes. You can use this method to assess social sustainability in construction projects. Then the industry stakeholders consultation and collaboration. Having a mutual discussion with industry stakeholders, communication between various industry stakeholders can throw more light on the various criteria and various aspects we need to take into consideration. On the final note, importance of social sustainability in construction projects. Social sustainability have a critical importance to play in every construction project. And one of those importance is fostering social equity and inclusion. It tends to provide that social equity and inclusion for we to be part of the project, for we to be taken along the project. It supports local economic development. Every project has its own effect, be it positive or negative effects. For this, it tends to support the local economic development of every community. It promotes health and well-being, promoting health and well-being of every individual involved in the project, be it current or in the future. It respect the cultural heritage and identity of the people. Every project must respect the cultural identity of the people where the project is being cited. So these are one of the importance of social sustainability in construction projects. And also enhance the quality of life. Enhance the quality of life of every individual. Thank you very much.
Boa tarde a todos. Agora nós teremos a segunda palestra do dia, que vai ser apresentada por Natália Brandão, que é discente daqui de Engenharia Civil, na graduação, e está no seu último período, né? Vai mostrar agora um trabalho que é sobre casos de atrasos que afetam as obras de construção, que é um tema muito relevante e que também vem sendo pesquisado aqui dentro do 10. Então, Natália, A palavra é sua, pode apresentar.
Obrigada. Boa tarde, gente. Como a Alisson falou, a professora falou também, meu nome é Natália, eu estou aqui no último período do curso. E esse trabalho, já tem alguns anos que ele foi bem sendo desenvolvido, né? Um tema que a gente começou a trabalhar aqui, quando a gente começou a tratar com obras públicas, com a gestão de obras públicas, e aí a gente deu esse enfoque nas causas de atraso que afetam obras públicas, para que se pudesse abrir um campo para que essas causas pudessem ser mitigadas e melhorasse o desempenho dos projetos. E aí, agora isso foi uma iniciação científica, né? Um período que eu fui bolsista, desde a pandemia que a gente iniciou, e agora eu estou trabalhando nisso para publicar um artigo como meu TCC. E aqui tem como autoras eu, a professora, e Maria Conceição, que é Cécia, que foi a minha orientadora durante a IC e no TCC também. Para onde é que passa? Eu aponto para onde? Hã? Agora. Pronto, aqui é só a estrutura, basicamente, do artigo, basicamente, que é o que vai ser publicado. Como eu estava falando, a gente ainda não submeteu, vai ser submetido ainda até o fim da semana, que é o prazo, mas estamos em processo de revisões, então qualquer contribuição é válida, fiquem à vontade. Para iniciar, eu trouxe aqui uma imagem que representa um pouco do que a gente tem como desenvolvimento sustentável, né? A sustentabilidade e esses 3 aspectos que ele traz: o social, o ambiental e o econômico. E o quanto isso é importante quando a gente trata, por exemplo, das necessidades da sociedade e também do desempenho econômico de um país. Mas para tudo, quando a gente fala nesses aspectos, para que o desempenho nesses 3 pilares sejam alcançados, é preciso que a gente tenha uma preocupação, uma atenção que vem sendo cada vez mais necessária, por exemplo, com o nosso ambiente, com as cidades, com toda a infraestrutura básica que é necessária para os desenvolvimentos, como aborda, por exemplo, o nosso ODS 9, de acordo com a Agenda 2030, que trata de inovação, indústria, inovação e infraestrutura. Então, ele foca um pouco na importância do desenvolvimento das indústrias, da aplicação de inovação e também da gestão da infraestrutura e da importância da infraestrutura básica para que se alcancem esses objetivos. E quando a gente entra nesse tema de infraestrutura, recai bastante na questão dos investimentos públicos para o desenvolvimento dos ambientes, das cidades, etc. E esses investimentos são bastante importantes, entretanto, são eles, né, que dão todo o arcabouço para a gente desenvolver. Entretanto, muitas vezes o atraso e a redução nesses investimentos vem fazendo com que o desempenho econômico e social dos países tenha uma certa dificuldade em ser satisfatório. E uma das justificativas para essa redução nos investimentos, a gente pode tratar como sendo pelos atrasos e paralisações que são comuns nas obras que a gente tem hoje, principalmente quando a gente trata de obras públicas. Como a gente sabe, as obras elas estão sujeitas a uma série de fatores inerentes assim, à indústria da construção. Alguns autores dizem que muitos deles são inevitáveis, mas muitos deles são, sim, evitáveis e são decorrentes de causas que poderiam ser tratadas, que poderiam ser mitigadas com algumas estratégias, se houvesse um estudo mais aprofundado delas. E aqui eu trouxe um exemplo dos principais fatores quando a gente trata do desempenho do projeto, do desempenho de um projeto em geral, que é o que a gente chama da tripla restrição da gestão de projetos, que ele traz que a qualidade, basicamente, está envolvida com, a gente precisa sempre se atentar ao cumprimento do escopo, dos custos que são orçados e do tempo que é previsto para a execução desde o princípio de uma obra. Então, de uma obra, na verdade, de um projeto em geral, envolvendo todas as suas etapas. Entretanto, isso aqui apesar de estar restrito, hoje em dia a gente sabe que existem inúmeros outros fatores com os estudos que afetam o projeto, mas isso pode ser, de certa forma, esses são os principais fatores que impactam no desempenho de um projeto e que podem ser bem sumarizados dessa forma. E tratando-se do tempo, que é o que a gente vai abordar, que são as causas de atraso, a gente tem principalmente, por exemplo, que cumprir o tempo de conclusão é um objetivo raramente alcançado no ramo da construção, como eu disse, e alguns autores já se proporam a fazer vários estudos em diversos países que demonstram esses atrasos, demonstram o que seriam esses atrasos e quais as causas, mas ainda existem algumas lacunas para a gente definir essas questões prioritárias para a mitigação desses fatores. Então, aqui eu trouxe uma definição de um autor que trata que atrasos na construção podem ser definidos como fazer algo acontecer mais tarde do que o esperado, ou planejado, ou não agir em tempo hábil. E, considerando todas essas situações, a gente teve o objetivo de identificar as principais causas de atrasos de projetos de construção que são citadas na literatura, por meio de uma revisão sistemática da literatura, para examinar a recorrência dessas causas e, dessa forma, definir essas questões prioritárias para que outros estudos possam fornecer estratégias para serem utilizadas para caracterizar mais esse problema e também para trazer medidas mitigadoras para ele. A metodologia foi realizada por uma revisão sistemática da literatura, que eu vou destrinchar um pouquinho mais a seguir como foi o passo a passo que a gente seguiu, as etapas, a coleta e a organização dos dados, a validação e análise estatística para elaborar o ranking das principais causas de atraso de projetos de construção e uma análise mais crítica dessas causas que foram obtidas por meio da elaboração desse ranking. Na etapa inicial, para a revisão sistemática da literatura, a gente realizou inicialmente a etapa de planejamento, em que é desenvolvido todo um protocolo de pesquisa, em que a partir daí a gente consegue delinear quais os caminhos até a finalização da pesquisa para realizar ele. Então, nesse protocolo são definidas as limitações da pesquisa, os critérios de exclusão e exclusão dos artigos que são selecionados, o período que será adotado, as bases de dados de buscadores, os strings de busca e também todos os dados que nós precisamos extrair para aí sim a gente fazer as análises seguintes. E tudo isso é registrado em um protocolo. Não sei se todo mundo já fez revisão sistemática, mas a revisão sistemática é justamente uma estratégia, né, uma técnica utilizada para fazer pesquisas de modo mais estruturados e que garantam cada vez mais confiabilidade para que a gente consiga abranger o maior número de estudos possíveis, o maior número que a literatura consegue, o maior número que a gente consiga buscar, sem estar, querendo ou não, sem passar por nenhum tipo de viés. Então, é a forma de a gente garantir isso. Após a revisão sistemática da literatura, foi feita a coleta e a organização dos dados, então, todos os estudos foram selecionados, foi utilizada uma ferramenta, que foi o REIAM, para a seleção dos estudos, que permite a participação de várias pessoas, e então todos os autores, todos os pesquisadores conseguiam ter acesso e fazer essa seleção. Foi feita a seleção e a aplicação a partir da aplicação dos critérios de seleção. E a partir dos estudos que foram selecionados, é feita a extração dos dados que foram definidos previamente no protocolo de pesquisa. Então, os dados foram as causas de atraso, o ano e o país de publicação e o país do estudo também, que é importante para fazer as análises, o autor, a base de dados e outras informações que a gente julgou nessa. Por fim, a análise e a validação estatística, a partir da obtenção dessas causas que a gente extraiu, fazer uma uniformização de todas elas. Então, elas foram agrupadas em causas gerais e, após isso, foi aplicado o índice de classificação geral, que é justamente o índice calculado para a gente elaborar esse ranking das causas gerais de atrasos, que eu vou mostrar mais à frente como é calculado. Pronto. Dos resultados, a gente basicamente dividiu os resultados em 2 etapas. Do mapeamento da revisão sistemática da literatura. Então, tem toda a questão dos estudos que foram selecionados. Aqui nessa imagem tem o fluxograma da seleção dos estudos, conforme a recomendação. Então, ele elenca os estudos selecionados, os quantitativos, a partir por meio das etapas já que foram definidas da revisão sistemática. Então, primeiro a gente fez o resgate de estudos nas bases de dados. Os estudos duplicados foram excluídos, após isso foi feita a seleção por título, resumo e, por fim, foi feita a seleção após leitura do texto completo. Da busca das bases de dados, a gente obteve um total de 1.574 estudos que foram selecionados. Desses estudos, 494 já foram removidos por serem duplicados. Após análise do título, palavra-chave e resumo, foram selecionados apenas 206, e nessa seleção inicial são justamente só aplicados os critérios de inclusão e exclusão que foram definidos no protocolo, e desses artigos selecionados foram feitas a leitura do texto deles, verificando quais se aplicavam para o estudo, quais atendiam aos critérios que foram definidos. Dentre esses critérios que eu estou comentando, por exemplo, a gente tem serem artigos primários, não serem artigos de revisão sistemática, por exemplo, tratarem do tema de causas de atraso de obras, alguns outros que tinha, tentando lembrar os critérios, mas está tudo no protocolo, tabelinha, eu acabei não colocando aqui, mas era que não tratavam, por exemplo, que não tinham as palavras-chave no título, nem no resumo, nem nas próprias palavras-chave. Enfim, são alguns dos critérios que a gente utiliza. E, por fim, após toda essa análise e a leitura dos artigos, a gente incluiu na revisão um total de 68 estudos, dos quais desses a gente pôde extrair os dados necessários para a elaboração do ranking das causas de atraso em projetos. Daqui a gente observa que as bases de dados que nos retornaram mais estudos foram a CS Direct e Scopus. Todas elas foram definidas também previamente quais seriam, considerando o tema a área delas, e também escolhemos algumas bases multidisciplinares, considerando a temática que a gente tinha. E das análises também desses estudos, a gente conseguiu obter estudos de 36 países diferentes. Então, como vocês podem ver aí, foram estudos distribuídos em todo o mapa. E deles, o que obteve o maior número de estudos foi o país que teve mais estudos selecionados, foi a Índia. E, assim, os outros 2 seguintes foram a Arábia Saudita e o Paquistão, mas já eram ambos com 4 estudos. Então, tem uma diferença bem grande aí, uma lacuna de estudos. A Índia se destacou bastante. E, no Brasil, eu destaquei aqui, a gente obteve apenas 2 estudos que tratavam desse tema e que foram selecionados nessa revisão sistemática, o que, de certo modo, é um pouco preocupante, demonstra uma certa lacuna no país em relação a esses estudos, e é um problema recorrente aqui, de acordo com os dados que a gente tem do TCU, do Atricom, a gente consegue ver que existe uma quantidade absurda de investimento parada, basicamente, em obras e projetos que não vão para frente e não trazem os benefícios para quem espera recebê-los, né, as entregas para a sociedade. Mas agora nós já estamos com vários estudos aí que a gente, por exemplo, já vem se dedicando a gente aqui, o grupo de pesquisa, já tivemos algumas dissertações que vem trabalhando para entender um pouco essas causas. E aqui tem um gráfico da quantidade de estudos por ano, que a gente limitou o período de 2017 a 2022, e aí está o asterisco para justamente justificar a limitação do período que foi adotado, considerando o início da pandemia do Covid. Então, a gente entende que a pandemia teve um impacto significativo nos projetos, nas obras em geral, e isso poderia ser um viés na nossa identificação de causas gerais. Então, muitas causas que ocorreram, que levaram a paralisações de obras, estavam depois desse período, puderam estar associadas provavelmente a questões que estavam envolvidas com a pandemia. E o segundo tópico dos resultados é abordando realmente das causas universais de atraso. Então, da literatura, dos 60 estudos que foram elegidos, a gente obteve 1.678 causas de atraso da literatura, mas o que a gente percebeu são que muitas dessas causas são semelhantes. Existe uma certa similaridade na descrição, às vezes apenas a grafia é diferente. Então, essas causas foram agrupadas, foi feita uma análise minuciosa de cada uma delas para fazer um reagrupamento. E aí todas elas foram primeiro traduzidas e após isso agrupadas e uniformizadas, obtendo um total de 321 causas de atraso. E essas 321 causas passaram pelo processo de análise e validação, que foi justamente por aquele índice que eu tinha comentado, o índice de classificação geral, ou é um índice adaptado do que a gente chama do índice de importância relativo, que é feito em muitos estudos. Então, aqui a gente considera não apenas, a análise das causas não é feita apenas pela frequência das causas, a quantidade de causas que foi obtida, mas considerando também a quantidade de estudos obtidas, que é esse F, e também a posição dessa causa nos estudos de origem. Então, muitas vezes, alguma causa pode estar em 10ª colocação em um estudo, mas a mesma causa pode estar em 1ª colocação em outro estudo. Então, tudo isso tem que ser ponderado porque tem um impacto, representa de alguma forma a importância daquela causa naquele país. E aqui são trouxe as 20 principais causas de atraso. Assim ficou meio ruim, porque estava com a animaçãozinha, mas eu precisei gerar um PDF, aí não vai dar para ver as 20. Mas aqui tem a classificação e o índice de classificação geral de cada uma delas. As 5 principais causas, como vocês podem ver, foram atrasos nos pagamentos ao empreiteiro pelo proprietário, solicitações frequentes de mudanças e alterações no projeto, tomada de decisão inadequada, lenta ou tardia, e em 4º e 5º lugar, dificuldades financeiras do empreiteiro e o planejamento e programação, o agendamento deficientes ou ineficientes. E aí tem todas as outras causas, eu não vou entrar no detalhe de cada uma delas, porque não dá para ler, mas o que a gente percebe é que, pelo índice, como eu comentei, não é pela frequência. Então, as 2 primeiras causas, a primeira e a segunda, atraso de pagamento e solicitações frequentes de mudança, além de serem as causas com maior índice de classificação geral, são também as 2 causas mais citadas na literatura. Ambas foram citadas 41 vezes. Mas já, por exemplo, a tomada de decisão não foi, se eu não me engano, a 4ª causa foi mais citada do que a 3ª. Porém, a relevância dela, que foi obtida nos outros estudos, acabou levando a essa ponderação. E aqui eu entrei no método de trazer um detalhezinho só em relação às 3 primeiras, porque não dá para a gente discutir todas elas, mas em relação à causa principal, né, a gente tem os atrasos no pagamento ao empreiteiro pelo proprietário, que foi a causa com maior índice de classificação geral e a causa mais citada na literatura. Dentre os estudos selecionados, ela foi considerada a principal causa, estava no ranking 1, da causa de 10 estudos que foram selecionados, e todos eles eram de países diferentes. Aqui eu trouxe de um estudo que foi feito em Bangladesh, que ele fez uma análise da percepção dos principais stakeholders envolvidos no país, e uma das justificativas que ele dá é que o atraso no pagamento ao empreiteiro afeta a capacidade do empreiteiro de suporte ao trabalho, principalmente quando a gente tem, por exemplo, muitas vezes acontece, da capacidade da empreiteira, da dimensão da empreiteira não ser tão grande em termos econômicos, por exemplo, ela não tem para suportar alguns tipos de atraso de pagamento e etc. De um estudo que foi selecionado do Brasil, em que essa causa foi citada, ela ocupou a 4ª posição, E aqui é só uma análise em relação a como isso impacta. Por exemplo, o pagamento em tempo hábil ao empreiteiro está diretamente relacionado ao fornecimento de mão de obra, material e progresso da construção no local. Então, isso acaba impactando, a depender, como eu disse, por exemplo, da capacidade do empreiteiro, isso acaba impactando bastante. Se ele não tiver condições de lidar com esses atrasos, isso acaba impactando bastante no desenvolvimento do serviço. A segunda foram as solicitações frequentes de mudanças e alterações dos projetos. Aqui, analisando, a gente percebe que muitas dessas causas, daquelas 20 que foram selecionadas, elas estavam relacionadas à fase de design ou de projetos, mas essas causas, elas, por exemplo, a segunda, solicitações frequentes de mudanças, erros e discrepâncias nos projetos e atraso na revisão e aprovação dos projetos, elas foram citadas juntas 93 vezes na literatura, apesar das outras estarem em outras colocações. E aqui, para a gente discutir um pouco, eu trouxe essa referência de um autor aqui do ano passado, em que uma obra de construção civil, todas as fases são definidas conforme o desenvolvimento dos projetos executivos e das diversas disciplinas envolvidas e necessárias. Então, cada vez que a gente tem algum problema em uma obra, por estar associado a alguma necessidade de mudança, alguma necessidade de alteração, então isso acaba impactando seriamente. E de acordo com o guia PMBOK, saiu com um pé a mais ali, e de alguns estudos também, isso indicam a importância da gente colocar mais esforços nas etapas iniciais, de iniciação de um projeto, para evitar que problemas sejam necessários de serem corrigidos mais à frente. Então, quanto mais a gente coloca esforço nas etapas de design, nas etapas de concepção, de um projeto básico, ou mesmo quando a gente trata só de obra, de um planejamento de obra, de um cronograma prévio, a gente tem uma maior segurança, querendo ou não, para evitar que ocorram mudanças desse tipo. Inclusive, essas solicitações frequentes de mudança não afetam apenas o cronograma, afetam também o custo de um projeto, como, por exemplo, tem o guia PMBOK, que eu acabei não colocando a imagem, mas tem um gráficozinho bem conhecido do custo de projetos, do custo da mudança, né, ao longo do ciclo de vida de um projeto. E aqui, como tópico, também aqui demonstra um pouco, alguns estudos demonstraram bastante a importância da proatividade na definição do escopo, na qualidade da execução dos projetos e no planejamento das etapas, para evitar que sejam necessárias assim, quaisquer mudanças, alterações e etc. E, por fim, o último, a gente teve a tomada de decisão inadequada, lenta ou tardia, foi citada 48 vezes na literatura e foi tomada, na maioria das vezes, como uma justificativa da deficiência na comunicação e na coordenação com os stakeholders. Geralmente, muito essa tomada de decisão com o cliente, mas, na verdade, todas as partes podem estar envolvidas e terem uma certa culpa nessa tomada de decisão lenta, inadequada ou tardia. E esse processo decisório, em qualquer projeto, é indispensável para o avanço de um projeto e, por isso, a gente precisa que todas as partes estejam alinhadas e aqui, como conclusão, a gente consegue observar que a revisão sistemática da literatura viabilizou a identificação das causas de atraso, como foi proposto no objetivo da pesquisa. Foram obtidas 1.676 causas nos 68 estudos, e delas a gente pôde inferir o ranking das 20 causas gerais de atraso em projetos de construção. Essas 3 causas que a gente debateu, que são os atrasos nos pagamentos ao empreiteiro, as solicitações frequentes de mudanças e a tomada de decisão inadequada, lenta ou tardia, foram as principais causas e também foram as mais citadas na literatura. E como a gente também pode perceber, pelos estudos, o estudo dos cronogramas está associado a todas as etapas de um projeto, desde a fase de iniciação, envolvendo o design, a concepção, até a execução dela em si, envolvendo questões de qualidade, tudo isso pode impactar no cronograma. Além disso, como foi visto, a gente obteve estudos de 36 países e observa-se que, apesar das muitas causas serem universais, como a gente percebeu, tem uma frequência bem considerável e uma relevância também muito significativa pelo índice de classificação geral, existem também causas de atraso que são muito particulares ao país e ao período. Então, a realidade social, a realidade econômica e também ao período de guerra, por exemplo, se a gente for tratar como a gente limitou esse estudo ao período da pandemia, como existem já estudos em 2023, publicados já em 2023, que tratam dessas causas de atraso em projetos durante esse período. Então, recomenda-se que pesquisas futuras tratem das estratégias de mitigação dos atrasos em obras, com foco, por exemplo, em boas práticas de gerenciamento de projetos e nas técnicas e ferramentas de gestão do conhecimento para aplicação de lições aprendidas de projetos anteriores. Como a gente percebe, essas causas são recorrentes e podem ser mitigadas. Os atrasos, só para fechar, os atrasos de projetos de construção impactam também os custos, a qualidade dos empreendimentos, a administração pública, a sociedade, o meio ambiente e a economia dos países. Então, as referências.